Hey, this is Philip from Steveson Motor Co, and on today's episode we are going to be talking all about greasing your classic Mini. So we just realized that we haven't talked about this very much. We've covered oil changes and valve adjustments, but we haven't covered greasing your classic Mini. With any old car, but particularly a classic Mini, it does require periodic greasing. You may not know about this because most new cars don't have any grease points anymore, but these old ones do. And we'll go through and we'll show you exactly where the grease points are on the Mini. It's something that's really easy to do. You should do it with every service. When a car comes in here for an oil change, they'll usually just hit all the points with a little bit of grease. You'll need a grease gun and a couple minutes of time. So really easy, good maintenance. In order to get started, what we're going to do is get the car in the air and we'll take off the front wheel. This will allow us access to all of the grease points at the front of the car. So first thing you want to do is you take your grease gun, and you'll notice that there are two grease nipples on the ball joints. There will be one on the top one on the bottom one. The top one will be facing the front of the car, and the bottom one will be facing the rear. So what I like to do is just attach the grease gun here, give it a wiggle, make sure it's attached, and then just give it a couple pumps. You don't need to put too much grease through. You don't need the whole thing flooding over with grease. You just need a little bit to fill the ball joints here. And you'll see it kind of come out between the dust boot. With the ball joints like this, they're quite stiff, especially if they're new. And one tip with this is there are several different types of grease guns. There's the handle type like this. There's also a lever type. The Minis are kind of famous for having really tight ball joints, especially if you've shimmed them yourself. And sometimes it takes quite a lot of pressure to get in there. So don't worry if it feels like it's locked up. A good technique is to move the arm, the steering here, left and right, and sometimes even put a jack underneath and lift it up and down and kind of get that ball joint moving. When it's moving like that, sometimes there will be a pocket that'll open up and it'll allow the grease to go in. So it may take a little bit, but if you pump it like that, now I can see it's coming through the top, and that's all it needs, just a little bit of grease. Pop that off, and then we'll do the bottom one. So same thing with the bottom one. Just pump it up until you see a little bit of grease coming out from behind the boot. Take that off. And then just grab a rag and clean up the edge here. You don't want any excess grease, dirt and stuff get stuck to it, so make sure it's nice and clean, and then that way, when you go to grease it next time, there won't be any crud over top. So if your car has adjustable high-lows, sometimes you'll have grease fittings on the trumpet, which is right here. Those are to lubricate the threads so that when you go to adjust it, they move freely. You don't need to grease those too often, but if your car does have them equipped, give them a little grease when you do the service. The final grease point on the front of the car is on the upper control arm, and you'll see towards the front side of the upper control arm, right at the pivot there's a grease nipple that's usually facing down. You can get the grease gun up in there, and same thing, you want to fill it with grease just until you see it start to poke out on the sides. That. And it takes a couple pumps. There you go. Now I'm seeing it just poke out of the edge, and that's plenty. As for the type of grease, the debate is sort of like engine oil. Everyone has their preference. We always just go with the high quality lithium-based grease for everything on the Mini. Seems to work great. There's different versions for different things. High quality, heavy duty, there's high heat, but choose the one that kind of fits your application. There's lots of good quality grease out there. The period of maintenance is, I think, a lot more important than the actual grease you're using. As long as you're getting fresh grease through there on a regular basis, your bearings and your wheel bearings, your ball joints and your upper control arm, they'll all last a lot longer. So on a rod change car like this one here, There's no grease points on the transmission. However, if you have a remote change transmission, the earlier style with the big aluminum housing that goes back to the shifter, there will be a grease point on there. I don't have one in the shop right now, so I can't demonstrate for you, but if you look underneath, you'll see the grease nipple on there. Make sure to hit that with a little bit of grease as well. Just keeps the shifter nice and free moving. So with that being said, let's go to the rear of the car and we'll show you where those grease points are. So at the rear of the car, there's only one grease point on either side, and you don't even actually have to take the wheel off to get to it. It's right here on the outside of the rear control arm. These are really important to grease because in the rear control arm there is a needle bearing and a brass bushing, and because there's no rubber in there, you want to make sure that those are greased so that contaminants don't get in, it doesn't rust. If you have that, what it'll do is it'll wear out the bearings and you'll get slop in your rear suspension. And in order to rebuild those, the arms need to come out, they need to be pressed out, reamed. It's a little bit of an operation. So a little bit of greasing here and there goes a long way in making sure that this works properly for a long time. So on the rear, really easy. You don't even have to take the wheel off. You'll see that the grease nipple's right on the end here. Just clean it up. Any kind of road gunk goes on there. Attach your grease gun and pump it up. And you can actually hear it. I can hear it coming out on the back side in there. And if I look, yeah, sure enough, it's coming up between the seals. You'll see there's two seals on the rear control arms. There's one at the front and one at the rear. And I usually like to go just until it starts to come out. And then from there, just pop the grease gun off again, clean it up, and you're good to go. So as you can imagine, here at the shop, we use a grease gun a lot, almost on a daily basis. And when we first started out, I was having a lot of problems with the grease gun we were using, popping off the end of the grease nipple and then leaking out the side. And after lots of frustration, I searched and I searched and I tried all these different styles and brands, and I found this company, Lock and Lube. And they have a patent on this special tip here. And I've been using this one now for 4 or 5 years, and it's awesome. Honestly, it saves so much time and headaches with greasing. On a Mini with the ball joints, you have to require a ton of pressure to get grease in there sometimes. And with the conventional fitting where you just push it on and it kind of locks itself, half the time they pop off or it leaks out the side or you can't get a straight angle on it. And with this fitting here, which is really neat, it's got kind of a trigger system. You pull down, it locks onto the grease nipple, and then you let it go. This has been awesome. It doesn't leak, it stays on there. When you buy them, they come, you can buy just the tip and it comes just like this, and it comes with a replacement cartridge. Like I said, I've been using this one for 4 or 5 years and I've never had to replace the cartridge on the inside. So really high quality stuff. With the ball joints on the Mini, there's a lot of pressure that's needed to get grease into them sometimes, and using the lever style here, although convenient, sometimes you just can't get enough pressure. So for that, we like to use a grease gun like this. This is a grease gun also made by Lock and Lube, and it's got this big lever here, and this allows you to get just a ton of pressure on it. It's really high quality. This is about the best thing you can get for a grease gun. And it's also got a nice little feature where the end here, it's got a flexi hose so you can reach into anywhere you want. And it's got a little end here that stops it from leaking out the side when it's in storage. So we use these all the time, and we decided to stock them on our website. So if you are doing any maintenance on your Mini, you definitely need a grease gun. Check them out, stevesonmotorguard.com. The link will be in the description below. Get yourself a good quality tool, and it'll be a pleasure to use. So as always, hopefully this video helped you out. Make sure to like and subscribe below, and we'll see you on the next one.